On October 12, 1492, an unknown ship arrived in the Bahamas. The inhabitants of the island did not know that they were about to meet one of the most important people in history. The man who stepped onto the shore was Christopher Columbus. He changed history by being the first European to reach the United States. It marks the beginning of the age of exploration and colonization of the Americas. But what if he hadn't made it to America? What would the world look like today if Christopher Columbus never existed? Let's find out. It all began when the Spanish monarchs Ferdinand and Isabella asked Columbus for help. They wanted him to find a new route to Asia. The old Silk Road was unsafe anymore because it went through lands controlled by Muslims, and the Portuguese were taking longer and longer to do their trading. There was also a third reason why they wanted to find a new trade route. Gold, silver, spices, and other goods from Asia were very expensive, and the Spanish wanted to get them at a lower price. If they could find a new way to Asia, it would make things much cheaper and they could make a lot of money. But there was another person trying to convince the Spanish rulers to fund his voyage to Asia. This person was a famous scientist, astronomer, and inventor named Leonardo da Vinci. He had many inventions such as a flying machine, armored cars, submarines, calculators, construction cranes, and even a robot. He was also the painter of the world-famous Mona Lisa. Da Vinci suggested that instead of going south around Africa to get to Asia, why not go north? He believed there was a land bridge that connected Europe and Asia. Of course, the Spanish didn't listen to Da Vinci and chose Columbus, and we all know why this was a huge mistake. Columbus had no idea that he had actually reached the United States. He thought he was in India. His crew was so tired of sailing and they had been rowing for weeks. Everyone assumed that they were going to die. When Columbus saw the trees and the plants, he knew they had reached land. He told his crew to prepare for battle with the natives, but no one attacked. In fact, no one came out of the forest. No matter how much Columbus called, no one answered him. Later, they found out that the native population had seen them but decided not to approach them. These people had never seen white skin before and thought the Europeans were gods or monsters. So they hid in the woods and watched the Europeans. That is exactly what Columbus wrote in his diary. He wrote about how the natives were afraid of them and didn't want to come out of their homes. Because of this, the explorers had the entire island to themselves. This was the beginning of the end for the natives. Over the next few years, diseases brought by Europeans killed millions of indigenous people. Columbus was not only a discoverer, but also an invader. He took advantage of the natives and forced them into slavery. He also enslaved the natives and treated them like animals. Even though Columbus had been dead for more than 400 years, his attitude still continues to be a problem in some countries. People are still fighting for equality and freedom from those who try to control them. But let's say Columbus had never set foot in the United States. What would the world look like today? How long would it have taken for the Europeans to discover America? First of all, the world would probably be much poorer. The discovery of the Americas led to an enormous amount of wealth flowing into Europe. This wealth was the result of mining, logging, plantations, and factories. The discovery of gold and silver mines in South America alone brought in so much money that it completely changed the economy of Europe. Columbus was the first to reach the United States, but he wasn't the last. Soon after him, other explorers arrived in America. One of these explorers was Amerigo Vespucci, an Italian explorer and cartographer. He noticed that the lands discovered by Columbus were not part of Asia, but were in fact a new continent. Vespucci realized that this was a completely new continent and wrote a letter to his friends in Florence, describing what he had seen. He said that there were wide rivers, high mountains, beautiful valleys, and friendly people. Vespucci invited his friends to come explore with him and assured them that they would return home as rich men. In the letter, which later became known as the Mundus Novus, he described the lands in such a way that it captured the attention of the whole of Europe. As soon as everyone heard about this new continent, they started to plan their own expeditions there. Soon, many Spaniards and Portuguese entered the race to conquer this new land. Then the French and English joined in. All these explorers competed to see who could conquer the most land. They wanted to take as much gold, silver, and other valuable resources as possible back to Europe. But they also fought against each other for territory. This competition quickly escalated into a war between the nations. They built large forts to defend themselves and protect their goods. They also had to worry about attacks by pirates. Pirates were a big problem at the time. They attacked merchant ships and stole their goods. Many of these ships were carrying valuable treasures from the Americas back to Europe. The pirates were so successful that the governments had to send out entire fleets of ships to escort the merchant ships. The treasure ships were heavily guarded, but sometimes the pirates were just too much. They would attack the ships in open waters and take everything. During this time, a mapmaker named Gerardus Mercator created a new type of map that showed the world in a different way. On this map, Europe was not in the middle, but the Americas were. This map became very popular and is still used today. Meanwhile, the Spanish began building cities and settlements in the Americas. They built large estates where they grew crops like sugar, tobacco, and cotton. They also built mines where they extracted gold, silver, and other metals. These estates and mines required a lot of workers, so the Spanish brought in slaves from Africa. The slave trade began. Slaves were transported across the Atlantic Ocean in terrible conditions. They were packed tightly in the holds of ships and given very little food and water. Many of them died during the journey. Those who survived were sold to the highest bidder. In the Americas, the slaves worked long hours for little or no pay. They were treated like animals and had no rights. The Spanish were the first to use slaves, but other Europeans followed their example. The English brought slaves to their colonies in North America. The Portuguese brought slaves to their colonies in South America, and the Dutch brought slaves to their colony in what is now Indonesia. If Columbus had not discovered the Americas, then all of this would not have happened. Who knows what the world would look like today? Maybe there would be no such thing as the United States. Maybe Canada would be part of Europe, and maybe Mexico would be a part of Asia. And that wouldn't be a bad thing. The United States has caused a lot of suffering throughout its history, including slavery and the genocide of Native Americans. Maybe the world would be a better place without the United States. Maybe the United States would never have been colonized. Without Columbus, the US would probably still be inhabited by the various tribes and nations of indigenous people. They would live in peace and harmony with nature. The United States would be a paradise on Earth. The United States has become a great military power. It has a very powerful army and navy. It spends more money on weapons than any other country in the world. The United States has also become a cultural superpower. Its movies, music, and fashion are popular all over the world. It has a large economy and is one of the richest countries in the world. But the United States has its problems. It has a large number of poor people. It also has a large number of homeless people. The United States has a lot of crime. There is also a lot of violence in the United States. Every year, thousands of people are killed or wounded in acts of violence. If Columbus had never discovered the Americas, maybe the world would be a better place. We will never know. But one thing is for sure. The discovery of the Americas changed history forever. It led to the age of exploration and colonization. It also led to the slave trade and the exploitation of natural resources. The discovery of the Americas is one of the most important events in history. What do you think? Would the world be a better place without the United States? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. See you next time.